Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I've got Clint here from Almar Organics. So, we're going to be talking organic food and whatever Clint has slipped up his sleeve today. We've caught him at the shop down in South Albury. He's under the pump. I think that sometimes happens. So, he's back in the office. So, welcome, Clint. Thank you for chatting with me today.
Thank you for inviting me and having me, Karen. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share some words and share some stories. And extremely grateful to be able to chat about all things life and where we're headed. I'm interested to see where the conversation goes, and then let's have some fun along the way.
Me too. I'll kick it off, shall I? Um, so you've got the store, so you're actually maybe I'll just wiggle it around a bit. So, because of course this podcast is really designed to talk about spirituality from a practical perspective, and it makes sense to me, and obviously to you too, that how we take care of our physical bodies and what we put into it is almost an act of spiritual self care, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what got you into this whole thing about um, selling organic food? Was it the growing that happened first?
Yep.
Take us where you want to go.
Perfect. Well, I will also do my best to encircle around spirit and spirituality as the underpinning of the conversation,
Yeah.
and will also share my unique history and journey, which has shaped and evolved my lens and my perspective on life and the bigger picture and the bigger meaning, and what is life all about, and what does life mean to me, and how I perceive my journey and what I have to look forward to. So again, that really excites me because for me personally, as a middle-aged man, you know, this is what I spend my time pondering. Is is the depths of the universe and what is my role in all of this? So again, so grateful for the opportunity to talk, Karen. And then again, like I said, I'll intertwine it all through my daily practices, which fundamentally revolve around food, nature, serving my community, and also being able to treat myself and serve myself as a temple and an expression of my practices which serve me. So that's kind of, even before I knew what I wanted to do. Let's say 10 years ago, Katie and I started Almar Organics 9 years ago. I think we've been in business for 9 years. And
Right.
for your audience and for yourself, I'll try and wrap it up in lovely little bundles without going too deep. And so I have a history of, I was in construction. Okay, I was working in construction because as a young man, I didn't know what I wanted to do, as do most young men and or women. But I enjoyed travel. I enjoyed making money, and that's what motivated me. And that was okay because I was a young man without any guidance. I didn't have a father figure. I was raised by my mother, and I was raised by my mother under the roof of the church, which is a blessing and potentially a curse as well. But
I'm hearing you there.
yeah, absolutely. Amen. And, it completely shaped my perspective on life, on values, on ethics, on spirit.
Yeah.
And, if we go down this path as well, this is the conversation because my children are now going to a Christian school, and my message to them is understanding the difference between religion and church,
Yeah.
religious practices and spiritual practices, and church and the entity that is the church and how it is used to, you know,
Yeah.
support community, or again, we can use whatever words we want to use. So that's really important. So that was kind of my background. And again, so then I pushed away from the church and everything that was sacred to my mother. Being raised by a single mum, that was hard, and no male figures. Anyway, I worked, traveled the world, spent my money, and mid to late 20s, I got sick of it. I was empty. I didn't know how to fill that hole, and I tried to fill it with many, many things. and I found a beautiful woman that was enough for me to at least change certain behaviors and the way that I was showing up in the world. And
We
that
should
was,
check that with Katie when she's available, I reckon.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure she'll probably take more credit than she deserves, but that critical moment in time for me kind of coalesced with meeting a beautiful woman, which was enough for me to, you know, just change a little bit. And with that came, well, I am not satisfied with my career. I work with people that I don't resonate with because I was quite lucky because I worked away. So I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time by myself. And again, I've always been quite lucky that I was happy alone. I like my own company. I have thoughts that are deep, but generally the language and the words that I use and the way that I feel about myself is quite positive. So whether that is nature or nurture, I'm not too sure. I've done a lot of work in that space, but so I was isolated throughout, my 20s when working away, and what that really made me do was get a better understanding of myself. So
Yeah.
then, who and what kind of people I didn't want to hang around with and didn't want to be a part of certain groups or circles or, people that did certain things. So when I came back to Albury and to my wife, I was like, I don't want to work in construction anymore because ultimately, and I don't want to stereotype anyone, but the gentlemen that I were working with, I wasn't resonating with. They weren't lifting me up. I wasn't lifting them up. I was like, okay, I need to get out of this environment, which was potentially toxic and wasn't uplifting. And I needed to find something that aligned more with my values.
Yeah.
And my values were health, fitness, food. I loved cooking, and there was an opportunity to buy into an existing small organic space, which was Almar Organics. And at that time, it was a lady called Alison, and she was doing veggie boxes,
Yes.
organic veggie boxes. And I looked into it, and both my wife and I thought, cool, what a fantastic opportunity. Gives me something to pour my energy into, something to, give me some purpose, and something that really aligned with how I was feeling at that time in my life. So, that was like 9 years ago. Yeah, 9 or 10 years ago, we started that process. And then we've gone and we've built this beautiful business now, which is certainly values focused, and again, to the detriment of our business sometimes, but that's how we have built the business, and now we're trying to be better at business. But ultimately, the business was about connecting people to the source of their food,
Yeah.
and being able to teach and show people through the way that we were living and what we were learning, how they can improve their lives and improve their health. And then this is a funny one. Well, I believe it's funny because it's like the chicken and the egg. And I hear a lot of like people in the regenerative space, in the growing space, in the organic space, that, and this kind of again aligns with the spirit that we're talking about, Karen, is that we need to do these practices to serve the mother or to serve nature, to heal and repair nature. And I'm like, no, I am doing this for me because this is what's best for me. And when it is truly aligned, what is best for me on the micro is my actions that serve the macro. And
Exactly.
so I've come from the other way because I'm like, no, like my body is a temple and I only need to eat, ABC, real food, grown by real people in real soil with real nutrients, with real bugs. And so then it's like, okay, well, let's get a farm and let's grow organic food for me. And then it's like, oh, but when I do this, I have an abundance of food for my community. And when I can regenerate the soil, then the animals come back to nature. And, so these low impact processes and practices which grow food the way that nature or God has designed do not only serve me, it serves my community, and then it can serve my ecosystem that I'm such a crucial part of because I'm a custodian of that land, or I am a caretaker of that ecosystem. And my impact can be minimal or it can be maximal, but that maximal impact that I want to have is one that serves the entirety, not just takes,
Yeah.
that consumption model, which is now we're in, I'm not going to say competition, but in correspondence with is, for whatever it is, 40, 50 years, I don't really know, but certainly for my lifetime, is we've been wired for more is less or less is more.
Yeah.
We want more food for less dollars. So then that corporate model flows into our food systems, and what do we end up with? We end up with a generation of sick and disconnected kids, sick and disconnected adults, obesity, chronic illness, metabolic sin, people living long but disconnected, unhealthy lives, plugged into the matrix, plugged into pharmaceuticals and meds. And for what purpose? Just so the cycle of money can continue to spin and doesn't serve seemingly no one, like not the individual, not the society,
Well,
not the
it's
planet as a whole, and not the cosmos.
certainly serving someone because, if you follow the money, we know who's being served.
Yeah, the redistribution of wealth is clearly evident everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And 100%. And I kind of just don't like to, like the term they, them, the elites, the
Yeah.
whatever, the corporatists. I just kind of think it kind of, in terms of our community here in Albury Wodonga, it kind of just disappears, But
Yeah, it does.
yeah, you feel the impact of that. So there is a long slash short story, Karen, around how I got to where I am now,
Yeah.
in terms of the shop and then the evolution of the farm and growing food at a level that my body and my community deserves, and so does Mother Nature. And then now I've expanded that because, again, understanding that human health is not just what you eat, it's what you do, it's what you believe, it's what you say, it's how you serve, it's your purpose, it's aligning with community and lifting others up. So that evolution has continued now into my space where I share my insights, not just around food, but around spirit and mindset and parenting and all these other wonderful things which make my life holistic and purposeful and intentional and spiritual and healthy. And that's now what I'm putting my energy into, is being able to help others live a life of purpose and integrity and of
Yeah.
intention. Yep.
It's a massive vision, isn't it? And to actually be able to hold all of that and to balance all of that, that's a really big undertaking to put all of that into one package. And yet, the more simple things become, the easier it is to hit all of those little bells.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think simplicity, life in simplicity, by a certain set of values can bring you peace, and also at the same time make you feel so much more whole, so much more complete, because it's only our own programming generally that makes us feel like we're not enough. So we need to do more or be more, whatever, make
Yeah,
make more, work more, have more impact. It depends on whether it's truly serving our true selves or whether it's serving our ego, or that competition that we spoke about a little bit earlier.
yeah,
But I agree, trying to manage and navigate that space, again, you're living in 2025, it's hard not to. We're here connecting over this is like a live chat stream through technology, which is fantastic because, again, too, like, we could have this conversation in person, but again, we want to be able to share it with others. But
yeah,
yes, again, I think in its simplest form, trying to break our lives down into bite-sized pizzas, which are based on those values and that are clear and simple, particularly when I get back to nature. Like,
mm,
what is Sadhguru says, like, all healing happens in nature. And, there's just so many lessons. Again, I'm very lucky that I get to have that space and I get to spend time outside with my feet in the dirt and my skin under the sun, and breathing fresh air, and, hanging out with
yeah.
the birds and the animals. But yeah, truly is a simpler life that I seek, Karen, even though that story may not sound as such.
I think we're all really, whether we are conscious about it or not, and certainly anyone listening to this will be conscious about that desire to connect to a life that has more meaning. And I find that a lot of the time people are thinking it has to be really big things. But in truth, even the way we consume our food or create a meal, they're the sorts of things, the choice of food and where it comes from. That whole, I mean, I've been out to your place. I did a permaculture course at the TAFE, and so Cannon took us through and showed us all the bits and bobs. We looked at the bees and all that. I'm a bit of a bee person. Um, and the energy out there is lovely. You've got a beautiful space there. It's there's a really soft energy out there, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, absolutely. With the location of the farm, without going too far off point, it is. I use the word sacred. And going a little bit deeper because I run workshops and retreats out there as well. But
Yeah.
it has like this aspect of east west orientation through the valley that lights up in the morning and then surrenders at night. And it has this, I use like this sacred energy, but it's either I feel like the sacred feminine, like it feels like this lovely cuddle
Mm,
when we work out there. It's like she's embracing us, and then that kind of flows into the farming. Like the try hard. I've had to push things a little bit this year because of the weather, um, and by that I just mean I'm always like behind. But maybe I'm always just on time. I don't know. But I always tell people that I'm always like, how's the farm going? Oh, I'm about 3 weeks behind where I want to be. Um, but again, too, like I said, that divine timing, perhaps I'm just exactly where I need to be at that moment in time when it comes to my scheduling. But yeah, this year has been a little bit tougher with, plants have died purely because it hasn't rained.
yeah.
Animals have struggled because there hasn't been any feed or any water.
Mm,
But I'm certainly aware of that, and I'm doing my best. But like I said, yeah, I probably am not as haven't served her as well as I can. Um,
yeah.
and
I
so I
mean,
think,
that's part of the thing. I mean, anybody who's coming into the shop there and purchasing food that's grown locally on the farm, and I imagine that you get some produce from around about as well. You can't do it all. Um, they're seeing what's in season. So there's an understanding about, which I think that people who go to these large supermarkets can actually forget. Back in the day, we would only eat cherries at Christmas time
Christmas.
because that's when they were in season. It was part of the celebration of summer, wasn't it? But
Yeah,
now they ship them in from all over the joint. And that's one of the things I think that you're talking about is, the cuddle and the land and being directed by it. Um, the fact that you're having to lose plants because it's not raining and all that sort of stuff. So people who come into the store have an opportunity to have a better understanding about where their food comes from and what's actually involved in the process of bringing food to their table.
yeah, absolutely. And that's been even before we had the farm, and you mentioned it in the last question or the last statement that you made as well, Karen, was that awareness that comes with consumption. And you mentioned, the people that are listening to this are conscious. And so I used the term like a few years ago, conscious consumption,
Yeah,
because we are consumers and we can't deny that. But there's a difference between unconscious and conscious consumption. And then again, particularly when it comes to food, I think again, when we mentioned health crises earlier as well, is that I believe one of the major causes of this health crisis, health epidemic that we're ill health epidemic, whatever you want to label it,
mm,
is a real disconnect from real food. I certainly believe that if people were to just pull back and look at the way they eat, and unfortunately, again, we just mentioned conscious and unconscious. A lot of it is unconscious. People
yeah,
don't even know what they eat. Like if you were to say to someone, "What do you eat in a day?" and most people will say, "Oh, I eat pretty healthy." Have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Exactly right. Okay, well, what does that consist of? And it'll be some form of processed food with maybe a little bit of real food, but then several snacks throughout the day, and then maybe flavored drinks, and this is just standard. I'm not, I don't want to
yeah,
generalize the stereotype too much, but this is just standard. And so, if everyone was to just peel that back and then develop a deeper here we go, a deeper connection to their food. If food then becomes sacred, because again, we have an abundance of food. The problem is that, and it's abundance of fake food, it's an abundance of unnatural food, it's an abundance of man-made, industrialized, hyperpalative foods, which doesn't serve the individual. Again, it serves those corporates that we spoke about earlier, keeps people sick, keeps people in a cubicle, keeps people plugged into the necessary farmers that they need to operate so they don't die, but they're still here. And I think it's
Mm.
a little bit intense just then, and I'm sorry.
No,
Um,
no,
but
mate, this food and food security is a really major topic. I think we should all be intense about it, quite frankly.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because and you mentioned, and I will mention it, is that eating seasonally. Because again, too, like we are conditioned, we're programmed to walk in a supermarket and there is abundance.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, it was only 5 years ago. You walk in a supermarket and there's like no toilet paper, and everyone's
Yeah, I remember it.
freaking out. The end of the world. I was like, people are still shitting the same amount as what they were 2 weeks ago. Why do we need a backup of toilet paper? That's
Exactly.
not food, but that's an example of like shelves are empty. And one thing that our society is really going to struggle with, and this is the thing, because we have too much, we have an abundance, like I said, not abundance of good food, abundance of food like products. People don't
We've got a lot of shit in cardboard boxes, don't we?
absolute plastic packaging,
Yeah.
even worse. We won't go there just yet. Um, so we don't know what it's like to be hungry, or we don't know what it's like. And again, I don't talk about me, but we as a society, we don't know what it's like to grow our own food. We don't know what it's like to kill our own animals.
Yeah.
And so that disconnect has arrived. And so there's no sacredness around food anymore. Like there's no communion. There's no and don't get me wrong, but there are people that do say grace, but there's no grace around the dinner table. Like we used to thank God for this meal and for the chef and for the farmer. And now it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, fuck, we'll just go through Macca's. Yeah, we'll just drive through Macca's. It's easy. It's going to cost $10. We'll feed the family and we'll go home and watch Netflix. So that
Yeah.
disconnect from the grower, from the source, from the season, and from God has created this void, which has been filled by temptation, gluttony, taste, blah, 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 blah. And where are we now? We're in a fragmented society where, conversations like this need to be had to make people conscious of the impacts and the greater impacts, not only on the micro, but on the macro, because where do these foods come from? They're made in factories, monocrop culture, which kills the soil, which kills the
Yeah.
microbiome, which kills the air, which kills the waterways, blah, blah, blah. This is the impact of this whole more for less model that we are now living through, Karen.
Yeah.
And hopefully I nailed those points. One more was the seasonal aspect again too.
Yeah.
Our bodies have designed, have evolved, have grown up in symbiosis with the environment that we are a part of. So certain cultures, certain races, certain genetic makeups are literally designed to eat. This is how our bodies have evolved for thousands of years, to eat certain foods at certain times of the year to thrive. Like this is an incredible machine which has been designed in the most amazing way by whatever universal intelligence, again, you want to label it, not to be eating sugar at 10:30 out of a packet. It's been designed to go through feast and famine through certain seasons, and load up on berries and fruits during the colder months, and then fatten up in the summer so we can go through the long winter. And again, we are denying our bodies natural expression, which is one of beauty and strength and robustness and resilience, to seek comfort, which is again killing the species at
Yeah.
a gradual but alarming rate. At the same
Yeah.
time, and it's people struggling to conceive naturally these days.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
there's just so many layers of disconnect which can be solved by throwing half this shit out of the supermarket and just filling it up with fruit and meat and just
Yeah.
and
Exactly. Exactly. Just getting the inflammation down in the body. I mean, that's a major thing. The way we have been taught to eat. Like, I'm just a tiny bit over 60 now. So my whole life has been one of, abundance in terms of food.
yep,
As a kid, in the summer, we would go up to Mountain Creek Road. with buckets and stand in the freezing cold water and stand there in the sunshine and eat the blackberries because they weren't poisoned, and fill up our buckets. And we'd go home and we'd have blackberry pie and we'd make jam, and it'd be frozen for the winter. And, it's so there's always been this abundance. Same with mushrooms. I mean, I'd be too scared to go and pick a mushroom out of a paddock these days. It'd be full of some revolting, disgusting stuff that has pulled out of the
Yeah,
dirt.
exactly.
It'd kill me. But yeah, we've we've so become disconnected. I mean, even just the whole thing about foraging, I don't think kids even know about that stuff. Most kids wouldn't know where the closest walnut tree is or apple tree. We used to know those things, didn't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
And that's, and you're talking too about nature's abundance.
Yeah,
Um, you know, I grew up much the same way. I was very lucky that, before my father did leave, because he was raised in a way where, you grew your own food and you had to hunt,
yeah,
catch your own food, and everything else was the word I would say, a blessing, I would say, but, everything else was over and above.
yeah.
And so, like we used to mushroom and forage and fish and hunt
Mm,
rabbits and, all the stuff, pester food, grow food, veggies, fruit trees, all the stuff. But yes, again, I think one of the common things, because I've ran quite a few kids' farm days, which
oh,
are
beautiful.
always so beautiful. Yeah, lots of junior schools, Scott's, St John's, and Border Christian College, where my girls go to school. And they're always an amazing day, but always challenge the kids. The first two questions I ask is like, where does your food come from? And it's great because you'll have those cheeky little buggers that'll say supermarket or Macca's, because they can't help themselves, but they're
Yeah,
genuinely real responses. They know they're on a farm and they know they're going to see food and food growing, and that's going to be the whole spiel. And then the other one is, what makes a farmer? And my answer is a farm. You can't have a farmer without the farm. But yeah, these kids are now grown up in spaces where mums and dads are too busy. So, no, and again, not all mums and dads. So many. And again, there's a revolution because people are realizing that the cost of food and the cost of life is one. It's artificial. It's man made. But that's another story for another day.
yeah,
We need to be able to be food resilient, as you said. We need to look after local food systems, and that starts at home. Because
yeah,
again, too, if you start growing food at home, then your kids recognize real food. They won't eat a tomato from the shop because it'll taste like crap. It won't taste like mum's tomato or grandma's tomato. And then all of a sudden they're going to the farmers markets, or they're coming to Almar, and then they're stopping at roadside stalls, and they're building and rebuilding that connection with food and their environment and the ecosystem that they're such a pivotal part of.
yeah,
I think it's the most powerful thing that anyone can do is I think even Mark Hyman says this. He goes, the best thing that you can do for your health is learn how to cook.
yeah,
Um, so one step removed from that is, if you're learning how to cook, then you're knowing what is going into your food.
yeah,
Most people don't. Again, if you're getting an external business, company, organisation to cook your food, could be bloody anything going into that food. And for the most part, again, it's the cheapest possible ingredients to be able to get that more for less mentality satisfied by the consumer. But if you're cooking food, you know what's going into it. And then, like I said, upstream from that is even and that's what got me going right at the start, like I said, was if you're actually growing your food, then unequivocally where that food has come from, what has gone onto that plant, what has gone into that plant, the soil it's grown in, the love that it's had. And then on a deeper level, again, is once you actually start growing food, then you understand that it's energy,
yes,
you know.
exactly.
So it's not just the compounds that your body is designed to on a physical level, it's the energy, it's the spiritual level that goes into it. So again, like I would hate to price my cauliflowers. I think I did a post on it maybe last year. I should be charging $85 for a cauliflower, but I should be charging $1,085 because it's like the sequence of love. It's the sequence of energy. It's man's energy. It's my productivity, but it's my love. It's because it's love for. It's not like, oh fuck, I've got to plant cauliflowers again today. It's like, yes, I get to plant cauliflowers today. And
Yeah.
you toil the soil with love, and you feed your compost, and you raise your seedlings from seed, and you water them every day in your handmade seed raising mix. And there's this whole process of love and energy that goes in. And then what's the end product is you get this beautiful cauliflower that you get to then let's slow bake that bloody thing in the wood roasted oven with some organic spices, and it takes another 3 hours, and then you get all excited to share that cauliflower with your family, and then they'll go, oh, it tastes like crap, Dad. But then you'll have other guests like, oh my God, it's the most amazing cauliflower I've ever eaten. And I'm like, you get it. You get it. You go out there and you take over the world, my friend, and you take my energy and you use it for good. Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. I love that you've talked about that because, I mean, food is really solidified sunshine, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
it's pure life force energy. And then, you're tilling the soil, you're making that soil alive. So the nutrition, the minerals are coming up. And then the people like yourself who are working with it, the people that you have in the store selling it, all of that stuff has an impact. And the majority of people are completely unaware of this energetic transfer and interplay that occurs. And you're right, you cannot put a price on that because that is the difference between um, eating something crunchy and eating something that's full of love that's going to nourish your soul as well as your body. It's
Absolutely.
really great that you've talked about that.
Yeah, and we sound like crazy hippies when we say it's nourishing our soul. Exactly right.
Yeah,
But, well, I believe that it is. I believe that it is.
yeah.
Um,
And even like, I mean, organics is a tricky one. I mean, there's a lot of I I imagine that for you, you're in a very difficult dance because, and I'm speaking from a business perspective now, because you've got a beautiful, thriving local business that people who understand food come in and they want to buy the produce. You're working on a certain set of values, but at the same time, as your business grows, the production needs to go up, and that must create a difficult balance to maintain, I would imagine.
um, it's everything about business is difficult, Karen.
True,
Um,
true.
we certainly with the farm. I've gotten better
Yeah,
um, because it's not entirely about. Originally, it was um, how to grow at scale, how to grow at scale fast. Let's get really good at this as quickly as I can, learn from my mistakes. So it cost lots of money, and it was quite a journey, and it was really interesting. So this year, I've reduced our varieties,
yeah.
still operating under the same mantra like I'm no till, we rotate crop, there's no external imports, all the imports are from the farm, which is
Wow, great,
beautiful.
amazing.
Make all our own compost, or have for the last 3 years now, which has been super cool. Um, and so, but I've changed my varieties because, again, I had to get good at one, what grows in my soil, in my location, in my own microclimate, but also two, then what sells. Like, there's no point in growing, and I'm lucky because I had a closed economy. Like, I have chickens and I have cows and I have compost. So, like, it doesn't ever go to waste. It just comes back around in a different form. Again, that energy that we spoke about,
Yeah.
we don't create any more energy. It just, is that Nikola Tesla? Like, it just moves or transfers or whatever it does. It just, it does some magic.
Yeah,
Um, so then this year it's like, okay, well, these are the variety of beets I grow. This is the pumpkin that I grow. And we do get we can I did get carried away in like your heirloom varieties, and I was growing like biodiversity. I was big on biodiversity, and I'm like, no, I don't know 40 different species of crop at any given time. I'm just making things, going back to what you said right at the start, simpler. I'm just making things way too complicated for myself, for my systems, and for my farm.
yeah,
So that's what I did was I simplified. I'd plant long running crops that would stay in the ground for a long time, and then I'd rotate and rest the beds. And that's how I would get my diversity. And I'd like cover crop with a pea or a manure mix. So I've changed
Yeah.
to simplify my life because I'm pretty sure I was going to get divorced last year. I can't remember if that's what my wife said. I was kind of like really busy. I couldn't, I know she said something. She's like, I'm leaving. Something's got to give. I can't remember. I wasn't really listening.
Woo.
And I picked up on what was going on. So yeah, I had to change because I couldn't just like serve the dirt, serve the farm, and then not serve my family as well. And don't get me wrong, like summer and spring in particular are like really stressful. And I know that God has given us longer days so we can be more productive and work that's, chop the wood and carry the water. But, it's really hard. So I simplified things this year. I changed our labour and it seemed to have worked a lot better.
Yeah.
But yes, back to your original question, is this dance, this balance? Yes, because I can't just, and I'll go back, I was speaking to this with my brother-in-law like only yesterday. It's like, you can work in something that you're passionate about, but if you're just working and you're not selling, now this is the business hat, if you're not providing value to your community, then it's just a hobby. And if you're a
Yeah.
market gardener that doesn't sell his food, it's a fucking expensive hobby,
Yeah. And your
So
kids are going to be hungry.
yes, yes, they'll get old and they'll be like, oh, well, Dad ever did. So, yeah, always evolving, always improving, always learning. And the biggest feedback loop, again, I no, wouldn't have been there but when I've done farm tools in the past, so the biggest feedback loop is nature, is the plants, is the soil. If you've pushed it too
Yeah.
far, it will let you know. If the plants are finished, they'll let you know. If it's time to plant, they'll let you know. And so it's the same with, life, my partnership, my relationship, business. There's all feedback, but you need to be open and
Yeah.
realize that you don't
And
understand or know everything, and you are
that takes
purely a
time.
student of life. It does take time. It does take
Yeah.
time, but that's
So you've
one
got
big
to be
thing.
able to stop, breathe, have your feet actually on the ground so that you can receive that feedback loop, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's one thing that um, I won't go off on tangent this time, but it is one thing that, yes, working in the land, on the land, is you can get quite caught up. As I said earlier, I'm always 2 or 3 weeks behind. So you can get really caught up with your head down and your bum up, toil, 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 and miss the roses, or miss the bird song. So I'm certainly getting better at that as well, Karen. Is like, this is a gift and I get to spend time in
Yeah.
nature in this incredible space working.
Mm.
So yeah, I need to enjoy it and be present for every moment.
Yeah. Look,
Not just
I
watch the clock. Not just watch the clock.
yeah, no, it's not about watching the clock at all, is it? And yet I guess that's what I was referring to before by saying, you're in a unique and challenging space because there's that understanding of nature and the production of food, but also having to make sure you can pay the rent and all the bills and things like that, and that
Yeah,
you're yeah, it's a tricky one, and I think I wonder whether the community in general understands the pressures involved in actually delivering a quality product like real food. I sometimes wonder about that.
yeah. And a short answer is absolutely. And for most people, like, we can't see the forest through the trees, or we can't see past our own nose because, like, at the end of the day, we're working in our own hustle with our own grind, and it's hard enough to be aware and conscious and present of our own actions and our
Mm,
own impact, and why are we doing the things that we do, to then go
mm,
another deeper level and zoom right out and go, oh well, Karen's
yeah,
over here and Clint's over here, and I wonder where they're at and how they're coping and how they're doing things. But yeah, I just, again, full circle, I certainly believe that educating our community on where and how food is grown, where it's come from, and what real food can do for you and your health is, the most impactful message that we can get across and get out to our community, or one of the most impactful
yeah.
ones.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I want to ask you about. I'll come back to I want to ask you about the men's groups I know you've been running. I'm really interested in hearing about that.
Yep.
Um, the other thing I want to ask you about is from a chemical perspective, like organic farming means, not using those big, nasty chemicals and things. Would you like to speak to that a little bit and
Yep. Yep.
your view on
Absolutely.
that? Mm.
Absolutely. So what, and this is the way I explain, because I love it, because I have people, and I've been doing this for a little while now, and I always have people come in and they say, like, how do I know? And this is the question that I get asked. So
All right.
this business, any business transaction, any value proposition, any exchange of money or goods or services for another is all about trust.
Yeah.
Okay, it's all about trust. So when you run, say, paddock to plate experience like mine, or you happen to have a farm down the road, it's a lot easier for me to be transparent,
Hmm.
um, because I can just say, come out to my farm. You
Yeah.
know, I'll show you. You can check my shed, my garage. You'll find some fly spray. That's about it. Um, so I always start there. I always start there, and so this is where it's come in. So there's there's organically grown, and then there's certified organic. And
Yeah.
the thing is, and this is why, so I like to explain this, is like there are certified organic growers, and that's who we have here in the shop. So these guys are bigger style farms that'll still run multi-species farms, because that's how they operate, that's what they believe in, but they're doing it at a much larger scale. And so what they have to do is they are governed or regulated by a certifying body. They have to pay for that,
Mm.
which sounds corrupt, but these are NGO companies, organisations that need to be paid, because their services go in there to approve certain practices. And this is across the board, it's not just farming or food or anything like that. But so certified organic, say pumpkin, well, pumpkins may be a bad example, but pumpkins grow quite easily. Anything with a thick skin is quite robust. You're more worried about getting eaten by rabbits or hares or
Yeah.
kangaroos than like bugs. But it's how they're grown, because, again, if you're putting, just say, a particular herbicide that goes into the soil that is hydrophilic, then it can be uptaken through the moisture within the soil, and it can end up in the cell wall of the plant, and then you ultimately ingest that. It can make you sick chronically. Um, so anyway, the organisations, basically police, they're regulating bodies for these farmers to farm under a certain set of rules,
Yep.
so that's what they're paying for, because they have to come and check on a regular basis that they're doing the things. Their soils get tested. They're only allowed to use certain inputs that are approved by these bodies. So where that comes into play or practice is, from my understanding, the way that I see it, is for the cities. Okay, for you're traveling and you can't make it to the farmers market, or you're not at your local growers area or your local grocery store, and so you're traveling and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's an organic pumpkin. It only says it's an organic pumpkin, but again, there's that level of trust that
Yeah.
someone has to take to transfer that value, or that money. So that's what that is. That is the organic, or the organic certification. And from the way that I see it and the way that I believe it, is that that is like a stamp of approval that the customer can trust. If they trust it, if they don't, then that's entirely up to them. I suggest they do more research until they're ready to trust, or they get someone like me to explain to them how it works. So what an organic grower can do, and what they do, Karen, is they use certain inputs, and by inputs I mean like fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, that are approved by the certifying regulator. Now, some of those products I would not use, but again, I'm small scale, and all of my inputs are natural, 100%. And all of these inputs are generally natural. There may be some man-made ones, particularly when it comes to like fertilizers, but they're not. They have been, again, they're certified, they're approved.
Mm.
Whether they will be approved in the future, or have been approved in the past, or are good for human consumption. Again, like back in the day, they used to say that you could drink Roundup. I would not recommend that to you.
Aren't they finding that in the placenta of brand new babies?
Well, I believe so, Karen. Yes. So,
I do too.
it's in the body, it's in the water, it's in the soil for a bloody long time. So
Mm,
anyway, there are, and some growers are more values driven and more values based than other growers. This is on a certified level.
yeah,
So again, I try and get the best ones. I try and get Victorian growers. I try and get ones that are growing more than just one product. And again, I've done my best to go to some of these farms. I've gone to the markets and try and connect with these, so then I can be that conduit of trust between the consumer
yeah.
and the producer. And like I said, when it comes to my farm or other local growers, then they practice transparency. And some of them will just tell you straight up, I'm not organic because, again, generally it's too hard or there's too many steps for me to go from,
There's
yeah,
a lot of money involved in getting that registration and keeping it,
of
isn't it?
changing. Oh, absolutely. And it's certainly so for me, it's not worth me getting my farm certified
No.
because I'm only selling direct to community here in my
Mm,
shop. If I was to sell to Melbourne, which again, if I was to do that, I'd have to reduce my 10 crops a season to 2 crops a season to have enough to be able to sell. And it just wouldn't be worth it, Karen.
yeah,
Um, but that's the difference. And so an organic grower and an organic grower like me or a permaculture grower or a biodynamic grower will use practices, as I mentioned earlier, like no till or low till, minimal disturbance to the soil to maintain the fungi and the microbial and the mycorrhiza integrity of the soil. Because again, if we turn soil, generally it kills the life in the soil. It exposes it to sun, to
yeah,
heat, to moisture that it doesn't need. You want to keep the minerals in the soil. So no till or low till for us is definitely no till. Um, and like I said, all my inputs is trying to balance the nitrogen and the carbon. Pretty much, it's very, very simple. I just use mulch when I need to use mulch, use compost when I need to use compost. I use animal manure off the farm, compost that I've made, and generally I'll use a sea sol or a sea oil solution when I plant my seedlings, and that's pretty much it. And
yeah.
usually I use the plants as an indicator of whether they need something or don't need something. Um,
It almost sounds as though, given the way you are operating, it's almost a bit more organic than the certified organic people, really.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to say that. Absolutely. But again, too, like their livelihood is different to my livelihood, and
Yeah.
they're growing mass to get to market to serve, hundreds of thousands of people in the city as opposed to me, a couple of hundred people here. And
It's a totally different model, isn't it? That's the bottom
absolutely.
line.
And that's,
Yeah,
and going back to like, as long as, not as long, but if they're true to their values, which most of them are, and honestly, like I've got a collection of their family-owned farms. They transitioned to full organic 20 years ago when the son took over the farm. Usually, it's a
yeah,
transition phase. They're growing this. They're running regenerative pastures where they've got multi-species crop or multi-species mammals and birds, and I believe, again, mentioned that word earlier, biodiversity. So in agriculture, it might be labeled multi-species. So again, like I said, if you've got different plants, grasses, and seeds, rotating your crops, in this case, vegetables, flowers, and fruits,
yeah,
many different animals with different microbes, with different inputs from their
yeah,
manure, which chew up different grasses at different times of the year, have different positive impacts on the soil and the ecosystem as a whole. So am I more organic? Like maybe not, but am I less input intensive? I would say yes as well.
yeah.
Yeah, yes as well. So we use, like, again, old school. I cover everything up. We weed by hand, you know.
I know, I think I've pulled a weed out
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. We love the spring hands in the dirt. Um, but fingers crossed we get on top of that weed bank in the soil. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, that's probably one of the biggest thing that I think most people need to understand. That is that the organic label or organic farmers. It's not a crock. It is literally a way of farming which generally encompasses low tox, minimal inputs, and supporting natural growth of crops throughout their natural growing
mm,
cycle and season. And what do I believe happens then, as we mentioned way back at the start, is that you're providing and growing a food which is then bioavailable in its nutrient form, but
yeah,
also energetically serves you. Not,
mm.
it's not dead, it's not dysfunctional. It's living energetics that can be transferred, and you
And
feel
every
it.
part of us can suck it up and use it, and it's
Absolutely,
good. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. Thank you for talking about that. I appreciate it. Um, So can we jump over to the groups that you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or is there
Did you?
anything else you wanted to talk about before we do that?
We've No, it's okay, Karen. We've spoken about many things in such a short period of time, from food to food systems to you know source and energy and the corporatocracy, and yeah, we've covered a lot of things.
Actually, a thought's just popped into my head. This is, obviously none of this is planned, right? Um, Food security, I mentioned that before. Personally, I have some concerns when I look out into the world and I see what's going on out there. I have a few little concerns about our food for us as a nation. Um, what do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was like one of my, and you may remember, I said right at the start, I was like, I had to lean into growing food at scale really fast.
Yeah,
I talked about shelves with no toilet paper, so it was like, here in this space, I'm like, okay, I can't get potatoes, and like people are like, where are the potatoes? So right at that moment, 2020, I saw the fractures in the food system and our reliance on single suppliers, supply chains, overseas. So it was like, okay, this is a call to arms. This is a call to action for me, Karen. Yeah, I'll be completely honest. It was again, protect me, protect my family. I'm
yeah.
in a position that most aren't. I can,
Well, at the end of the day, we have to take care of ourselves first and our family before we can do anything, for the community. It's a
yeah,
basic thing, isn't it?
yeah, 100%. And that was it. Fill the cup, pour from a full cup. But my
Yeah,
motivation was, okay, we need to lock in. We need to secure food for our family, and then don't get me wrong, my vision was always abundance. My vision was always and the community,
yeah, yeah. I understand
because
that.
during that period, community was very strong. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it was great. To be honest, it was fracturing for some, and it was very adhesive for others, and for me, it was very adhesive, which I'm very grateful for.
Mhm.
But my goal was sovereignty. I was like, I got to be food sovereign, energy sovereign, money sovereign. I'm like, I'm unplugging, mate. I'm going to build my own principality out here, and put up walls. And
I'm hearing you.
yeah, me and mine will be okay. And then
Yeah.
anyone else wants to come, you bring your guns and your gold bullion, and we'll be okay. But yeah, it's very reactive. I did mention that I can be
Yeah.
reactive sometimes.
No, no.
So yes, the writing was on the wall then, and then again now, like it just depends on like how far fetched you want to get in conspiracy. But the more centralized food becomes,
Yeah.
the more reliant the masses become on that centralized food system, the harder it is for those people to be able to do what we have done, or what we spoke about in being sovereign. You will not have a choice, because if there's no potatoes and there's no carrots and there's only hyper palatable, bloody crunchy, crisp crickets in the shop, like what option do you have?
Yeah.
And you, like you said, you look around. Not so much I'm looking in my store, but even in the supermarket, it's all very glitzy. But when you actually drive out into the bush or out into the farmland, or you do the trip to Melbourne or the trip to Sydney, like the land is stretched. Farmers are struggling. Primary producers are
Mm.
struggling. Um, I, migration, population growth globally, not just here in the country. Like there's pressure on our food systems, and they need to be preserved. But I use the term centralized versus decentralized, and I believe again that for thriving, healthy communities on every scale, in every aspect, decentralization is what is going to preserve and help these communities thrive. So, a thriving food community is about many local growers supporting a local base of conscious consumers, conscious food
Yeah.
eaters, those that are energetically aligned and values aligned.
Mm.
That is the future, and one that's going to be sustainable, one that's going to be, I'm going to use the word profitable, impactful, one that's going to last, one that people will see value in,
Yeah.
because that's just how it's meant to be. Sorry,
Mm.
with
Yeah.
inevitability, the more centralized that the food systems become, the more likely they are to collapse, because
Yeah.
It's just that's not a sustainable model. You can't have
Mm,
just one wheat grower in Australia growing all the wheat for all the processed bread, because what happens if there's a flood or a fire or a drought or a,
exactly.
like all of a sudden they can't drive trucks anymore and we've got to wait 10 years for electric trucks. Like, who knows?
Mm,
Um, so it starts in your own backyard. It starts with food swaps. It starts with going to your local organic grocery store. It starts with going to your
yeah.
farmers market. It starts with looking online on where these local food outlets and local food systems are operating, and how can you be a part of that to
Mm,
secure your food future, your food integrity, your health future, and your sovereignty into the future.
yeah.
There you go. There's a rant, but yeah.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Oh, and not certainly not what I expected, and that's absolutely fine. It's so interesting to hear you talk about that, and really, what my take on that is, food when we've got some power. It's a power issue, really, isn't it? Food is required for life, and if we get too far removed from that, we've lost our power,
Yeah,
basically.
absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
All right, let's segue because I'm just aware of the time and I know you're a busy person. You're spinning a lot of plates. Um, so you run, and I've heard about this from somebody I know who's been to one of your men's groups, and it sounded, I mean, nothing was really disclosed, but I could see from the look on his face and the way he held his body that it was a really wonderful experience for him. And I don't think that there's that many men in the community who are working in the way that you do. I'd love to hear you
Yep.
speak about this.
Uh, awesome. Awesome. I love the opportunity to speak about it, Karen. I have through that journey, through that the 2020s and prior to self development, spirituality, my own healing journey.
Mm,
Um, that period, like 2021, 2022, I found myself as a sounding board for many
yeah.
on many levels. There's a lot of fear, a lot of loneliness, and my mum took her own life through suicide. So that
Oh,
was something that was my crisis. That was the grief that I had to work through,
oh
and
wow, I'm so
still,
sorry to hear that.
that's okay. And I'm still working through that. But that I worked very hard to maintain my sanity, my connection to God, my presence, to heal. And I learned so much that I can't just keep that to myself.
Yeah.
I can't just keep that to myself, because I see many men, many women too. But, I haven't been put on this earth to help everybody. Um,
That's right. And can I say that it isn't, being a woman, a middle age, a certain age woman, I mean, that's part of our role as women. We learn how to do that nurturing thing. But for men, from my perspective, there's
yeah,
been a massive shift in the expectation on men and how they're supported. So, sorry, you
yeah.
go
Oh,
go
well,
on.
you nailed it in terms of like a generational space that we're in.
Mm,
Like I grew up in the 80s and 90s as a kid, but single parent. But like my dad didn't have the capacity to be a parent.
yeah,
Um, so I've had to work through that, and I don't want my children to go through that. But I'm not individual. I'm not unique in that story. Men, my vintage. I read a book called The New Manhood's Deep It, and I read many, many books. I'm always reading, but just statistics. It was like, I think maybe 5%. He just, and again, I'm just going to doctor these
yeah,
numbers,
that's
but it's
okay.
like 5%. But he starts at the back, and it's like he's got a group of 100 men that are there for one of his workshops. Okay, and basically, long story short, he's a writer, he's a psychologist, and he runs workshops for parents. But anyway, this is specific about men and healing men and father-son relationships. Anyway, there's 100 men in the room, and 50% of them don't have anything to do with their father. They haven't talked for years. Put me in
Mhm.
that category. I mean, I have spoken to him, but you know what I mean. In reality, nothing to do with him. I think it's like what was it, 40% have a duty to their father but don't have
Yep.
a connection or relationship with their father. 5% have a relationship with their father, but it's not deep, or they've worked through it or something like
Yeah.
that. I can't remember. And then the final 5% actually have a father that is their male role model and is the one that they go to, that they is what you would imagine the ideal masculine
Our
role model would
hopes
be.
and dreams.
Yes, like what all young boys want is the dad that says, "You're doing a good job. This is how I will do it the next time. I love you. I'm proud of you. Keep going, son. Next time you need help, come to me." And
Mm.
so, just that figure alone, 95% of men grew up without a male role model that empowered them to be healthy masculine,
Mm.
empowered them to be able to, through relationships as well, teach them how to nurture a woman and, honor their own feminine and the femininity within the home, and how do they support that. And I think that is the most important thing within any relationship is, understanding the polarity and where you are and where your partner is at any given time. And that comes with self-awareness, it comes with work, but that's because we haven't been taught, and by we, again, I'm throwing men in a bucket.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Most men haven't been taught, and even the 5% that had those healthy role models may not have been specifically taught or used the language that I'm using, but they were led in a way that they have evolved to be healthy, masculine men that are going to do the same
Mm.
for their kids and their community and however they show up in the world. So this is huge, and for me, I am a masculine guy. I like to lead, I like to create, I like to build, I like to think
Mm.
programmatically and linearly, and I have a beautiful woman that balances that out and then also causes stress and friction in my life. But
Oh, it
that,
sounds like a normal life, Clint.
well, it's sensational. Yeah, absolutely, it's so beautiful. But I'm very aware of her, and she's very aware of me, and it's a constant, evolution of ourselves and
Mm.
how we can be better partners, because understanding that impacts my kids and other people's kids. So I've just done lots of work in how I can be a good dad, a good father, a good husband, a good role model in the community. And without going too far, I have this beautiful space where men can unplug and be embraced by the feminine. As I
Mm.
mentioned earlier, spending time in nature, in the bush, with your shoes off is like a warm hug from a woman.
Mm.
But it's the mother, it's not the wife, it's not their mother, so there won't be any resentment towards her, or those words that come up when someone says, "Oh, your mum, how's your relationship with your mum?" So yes, I have this space, and we have built a series of workshops where my goal is to help men, in a nutshell, find out more about themselves. Um, Pretty simply, to encourage them to get out of their comfort zone, because just so many men are going back to what you said earlier about those role models. Is that I think, like my father was not just physically but emotionally unavailable, so you have to figure this stuff out in your teens and 20s, which is not good for me, not good for those people that I heard along the way. So what a lot of men do, again, their only role model was provide or work. And so a lot of men that I'm working with now, they're providers. They work their ass off. They bring home the money. They pay the mortgage, and that's how they show love, because that's how they were shown love. But one of my things that I try and get them to understand is that, you are more than your work. You are more than you're providing, and
Mm.
you need to lean into that to realize that your healthy expression of your love and your language and your emotions and your feelings is what your family needs. So I help men compartmentalize some of that. I help them recognize some of that within inside them, not through conversation, through workshops, because men work, we do the work.
Yes.
We do have circle, and I'm not a woman, so I've never been to a woman's circle, but I
Yeah.
would assume it would be very different, because you guys would feel very safe and being vulnerable and being able to express. That's what a man's role is for his woman, is to create a space where she feels safe to be her emotional self. We don't need to understand what's going on in there, because we never can, because we are from
That's right.
Mars and you guys are from
And you
Venus.
don't want to. You
No,
don't want
no, we
to.
just need to build a harbour for you to, like, rock around and create some waves and some splashes. And so, again, just getting men to do workshops so they can peel some of those layers back, recognize their patterns in themselves, and then try and empower them with some practices that they can take home
Yeah.
around anger, around love, around vulnerability, around communication and expression, and then also some somatic stuff as well. So I get them to move that energy through their body, because a man feels emotion in his body, but he can't necessarily express that emotion. So the somatic work is really powerful as well, because
And that makes sense because it's a different brain.
it is the left and the right, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. So, we feel like, what's the best way I can describe it? Let's just say anger is like my forehead hurts and I'm seeing red.
Mm.
Whereas if I were to say, "Oh, Karen, are you angry?" then you would be able to articulate what that
Mm.
sensation is
Yeah.
and what you're angry at. Whereas a
And
man
the little details
Yeah,
involved.
yes. Whereas a man is taught to suppress generally by example,
Yeah.
and then not process and push that down, bottle that down, and hold that in because you don't express yourself in a way that shows emotion. Because if you show emotion, you show weakness, and you're not weak. You're a man. You're meant to be strong.
Yeah.
So yes, and I don't like giving away too much in terms of our workshops.
No, no, that's
That's what we
fine.
do. We work really hard. We build trust. Then we peel them back and break them down, chew them up and spit them back out and send them back out into the world. Um, Hopefully a little bit lighter emotionally and spiritually, and then also a little bit more connected, because
Yeah.
so the workshops that we do are quite intense, and the goal is to build a brotherhood, build a community of men that are doing the
Yeah.
work and showing up for themselves, for their family, for their community, and then also building a community. So we all stay in touch and we catch up
Mm.
regularly, and it's been incredible, Karen. It's something I'm very proud of, and it's something that brings me a lot of joy, a lot of pain, a lot of love, and a lot of reward. And yeah, it's really cool to be able to work with men and see them grow and do things that they probably would never have thought they would or could do.
I'm so happy to hear that. It's I'm actually a trained therapist and I've worked in that space for a long time. And the the emptiness of the space for men receiving support has been a personal pain point for me because um, yeah, it's men. I mean, I've worked with a lot of men actually over the years, but it's a different way of operating. So what you're talking about is definitely the building of brotherhood, and it's a completely different way of doing things, and it's perfect. It's exactly what we need. And like you said, for women, I'm so basic. I am so basically and inappropriate, Clint, because I think about chickens, and often will use this very inappropriate story with my clients if I'm doing, particularly working with a woman who's got a problem with her man, and I'll say, "Yeah, it's all about chooks. When you look at chickens, they think that the rooster's doing basically nothing except wandering around looking gorgeous. But when he's not there, she has to start watching out for that big bird that's going to come and get her. And she can't do her chicken work. And so the egg production drops.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. We all know that's true. So to we need our men to actually be themselves so that the women in our community can actually um, for people who are listening to this, somebody's trying to get into Clint's office and he's holding his hand up. It's quite good.
And I agree, just totally with you, Karen. It's exactly right, because the rifts again in modern relationships is a cause of that, because
Yeah,
when a woman feels the need to step into her masculinity, then what happens? Her
yeah,
femininity is drawn out of her and it's replaced. So, you like you said, like the chicken is a great example, because she's not feeling safe to be a hen,
yeah,
so she can't be a hen. And
That's
so
right.
in the home or in the modern life, it's like the woman feels like, and again, this is part of the fracturing of society and the
Yeah.
modern family, the traditional family unit.
Mhm.
Again, by design, or I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's divide and conquer, whatever. But yes, the woman and the man. So the man is now stepping into his feminine to support this space, which I'm guilty of. Like I have to be the gentle parent and the confidant and the bloody emotional counselor. And again, at the end, like I said, like you just said, my wife doesn't need me; she needs me to be the rooster,
Exactly.
not just strut
But
around.
because
But
of the way society has groomed us,
yes,
as women, we sometimes don't know that. I'll often say to
yes,
women, "You don't need a guy who to, tell you you look beautiful. That's what your girlfriends are for."
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Oh, not that's not the right example, but that's what girlfriends are for.
yeah, 100%. And so again, I just agree with you. And same with a brotherhood, a bunch of good, positive, influential mates. My wife, and I love this one too. If I just say I'm the rooster, like my flock of hens, but my wife doesn't want me to come home and go, oh, babe, look, whole business, oh, I'm struggling. I don't, you know. She
Yeah.
wants me to come home and go, on top of it, got it sorted, babe. You just dance your flow and surrender to the moon, and you just make some artwork and you just enjoy being you and everything will be okay. And then when you get to the mates, it's like, okay, boys, I have a problem. What solution do you suggest we look at this so we can fix it?
Mm.
Because I don't want to be bringing this home to my wife. Again, that's in its most simplest form. And it goes, like
Yeah.
you said, vice versa. Again, like my wife, when she's emotional, what does she need from me? She just needs to feel held and safe.
Yeah.
When she wants advice for the way that she feels, she'll go to her mum, her sisters, or a group of girlfriends because she doesn't want me and my pragmatic and masculine approach to give her direct answer and say, babe, if you just do this, then this will fix this and everything will be all right. It is.
Until she does need that, and
Yes.
when she does need that, she will come to you.
Yeah, and she'll probably ask me directly instead
Yeah,
of me
that's right.
trying to read between the lines. So that all takes practice, but
Clint, you and I could talk forever, but I know I'm watching the time and I'm thinking I need to let you get back to business.
it's all good.
Um, it has been absolutely super interesting, and we've covered a lot more than I had even hoped for. I'm really grateful for your time and
Pleasure.
your conversation. Um, is there anything that you want to sort of share? Like, obviously, tell us where the shop is so that
Okay.
people listening can come and
Yeah.
find you.
Cool. We are, yes, bricks and mortar. So we are a real life shop in a real life location, corner of Kiewa Street and Yurragong Street in South Albury. So 539 Yurragong Street, South Albury. Our email, no, sorry, our website, www.almarorganics.com.au. If you want to have a look
Yeah.
at the website, open Monday to Saturday. You can find Almar Organics on Instagram. You can,
I'll actually put the links in the little blurb so that
cool.
people can click on that and
Yep.
come to you too.
Perfect. Yep. Almar
Yeah.
Organics, or also my Almar Life, which is my personal brand as well. So that pushes
Okay.
more the men's health and psychology
Perfect.
and support and mindset and wellness, and my 7 pillars to the modern man's healthy life. So it's a little bit different and a little bit more.
Okay. Have I got those links,
I'm not
Clint?
too sure, Karen, but if not, I'll definitely send them to you, or
Yeah.
vice
Okay.
versa. If you
Good.
send me an email, I'll get it through to you ASAP.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I appreciate the time. As I mentioned to you, I think, when we chatted the other day, if anyone wants to sit down and listen to me talk about myself for an hour, more than happy to, because most of the time I'm just pottering around in the fields, pondering my own thoughts. So yeah, no, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Look, we'll wrap it there and thank you so much. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing, not just with the men, not just with the food, but also holding this intention. I think your why is very powerful. And let there be more of it, I say.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you very much. I best be off. There's a few
Okay.
people lining up, so I'm not too sure what I'm in trouble for, but I'm about to find out.
All right. Hang on a second.